My ex-wife cheated, lied, dragged me through court, and tried to cut me out of my kids' lives. Now she's begging me for financial help 12 years later and saying I abandoned her twice. Am I heartless for not caring anymore? I, 40, married my ex-wife, Lisa, 40, 20 years ago. At the time, we were both fresh out of college, full of hope and excitement about building a life together. Like most young couples, we thought we had it all figured out. Dreams of a future, a family, stability. For a while, it looked like we were on the right track. We bought a modest home, settled into our jobs, and had two amazing children, who are now 18 and 16. The early years were filled with the usual challenges, but I genuinely believed we were in it together. We were married for 5.5 years. And though no marriage is perfect, I can honestly say I never saw what was coming. The end came in one single moment that's burned into my memory. I had come home early from work one day, completely unannounced. I wasn't trying to catch anyone out. I just wanted to surprise my wife and spend some unexpected time with the family. Instead, I opened the door and walked straight into a nightmare. Lisa was in bed with another man. Our bed. Our home. The place where we built our life. She jumped up, obviously shocked, and immediately went into damage control. "It's not what it looks like," she said. "He's just a friend who needed a place to stay." As if that could explain why she was lying beside him, half-dressed, with the sheets barely covering them. As if that explained why our kids were conveniently at my parents' house, and why she hadn't mentioned a word about anyone staying over. I didn't explode. I didn't scream. I just turned and walked out. It was like the air had been knocked out of my lungs. I spent the next few days in a fog, just going through the motions. But when I finally cleared my head, I knew what I had to do. I filed for divorce. That should have been the end of it. But with Lisa, nothing is ever that simple. A few weeks into the proceedings, she dropped another bomb. She was pregnant. Suddenly, she wanted to reconcile. She claimed the baby was mine, said this was fate, and that we should work things out for the family. But I knew there was no way that child was mine. I had gotten a vasectomy after our second child, and all follow-up tests had confirmed it was effective. I wasn't shooting blanks, I was shooting nothing at all. When I reminded her of the vasectomy, she flipped. One minute she was pleading, the next she was angry. Eventually, she admitted it wasn't mine.
Just like that.
No apology. No remorse. Then, not long after, she told me she miscarried. And somehow, she still managed to blame me, said the stress from the divorce and the custody battle had caused it. Let me be clear, I wasn't the one dragging things out. She was the one demanding sole custody of the kids and an outrageous $5,000 a month in child support, an amount that was nowhere near feasible based on my income. She wanted to bleed me dry, emotionally and financially. I believe it was never about the kids, it was about control. About punishing me for walking away after she got caught. As if that wasn't enough, she moved in with the man she cheated on me with. He got arrested not long after, for reasons I won't get into, but he ended up serving a 2-year prison sentence. Lisa never left his house. She stayed there like nothing had happened, as if that was her new normal. Watching from a distance, I felt a strange mixture of rage, sadness, and relief. I was angry that she could be so reckless with her life and the lives of our children. But I was also relieved to be out of it, to be free. Eventually, the divorce was finalized. We were granted 50-50 shared physical and legal custody, with a court-ordered parenting plan that outlined everything in detail: who had the kids when, how holidays were divided, school events, medical decisions. Everything. It was rigid, but we needed that structure. I've done everything I can to give my kids a safe and stable environment since then. I've never spoken poorly about their mother in front of them, even when I wanted to scream. I've attended every school play, every parent-teacher conference, every late-night emergency. I've tried to be the anchor in the storm that Lisa created. And despite it all, my kids are doing well. They're strong, thoughtful, and resilient. They see more than I give them credit for. Our kids absolutely hated Lisa's husband. From the moment he entered their lives, there was tension. He was a controlling, petty man, someone who was clearly uncomfortable with the fact that Lisa shared custody with me. But instead of dealing with his insecurities like an adult, he took them out on my children. He acted like a drill sergeant in his own home, policing everything they did and treating them more like prisoners than kids. He would rummage through their backpacks every time they came over from my house, like he was expecting to find contraband. He'd make them empty their pockets, open their lunchboxes, and explain what each item was and where it came from. It was degrading and invasive. The worst was the food situation. If they brought over snacks from my house, or even leftovers from school lunches, he'd confiscate them. He claimed it was because he didn't know what was in it, or that it was disrespectful to bring outside food into his home. But the kids told me the truth. He either ate the food himself or threw it away in front of them. He'd smirk and say they didn't need it. One time, my daughter brought over cookies she had baked with me over the weekend, and he tossed the whole container without even opening it. Said it was junk and they didn't need to eat garbage. The look on her face when she told me, heartbreaking. And as if that wasn't bad enough, he would actually send messages to me through the kids. Handwritten notes. He'd fold them up, give them to my kids, and say, "Make sure your father sees this." Like we were in some kind of twisted custody Cold War, and the kids were his unwilling couriers. I always opened the notes with a knot in my stomach. Usually they were passive-aggressive complaints, petty grievances, or veiled threats about how I was undermining his authority. Once he even included a printout of a parenting article he thought I should read, with parts highlighted. Lisa knew about all of this. The kids told her repeatedly how much they hated being there, how stressed they felt, how controlled they were. And instead of acknowledging the problem, she turned it around. She accused me of alienating the kids, claimed I was poisoning them against her husband. She dragged me to court and stood there in front of a judge, arguing that I was emotionally manipulating our children because they didn't want to spend time in her home. The judge gave her space to speak, but didn't buy it. I had documentation, records, even statements from the school counselor noting the kids' anxiety spikes when they had to transition to their mother's house. The judge dismissed her claims and thankfully didn't change our custody arrangement, but it was exhausting to even have to go through the process. Meanwhile, Lisa's life with her husband was unraveling in its own right. She found out that he had lied about having a child before they met, just kept it from her until it surfaced on its own. And if that wasn't enough, it came out that he had fathered another child while they were having their affair, before my divorce with Lisa was even finalized. Suddenly, there were 2 kids from 2 different mothers in the picture, and before long, both were living full-time under their roof. I couldn't believe it. The same man who tried to control every inch of my kids' lives was now raising 2 other children he barely knew. And Lisa? Instead of realizing she'd made a terrible mistake, she doubled down. She filed to increase child support, arguing that her household had more financial needs now. Never mind that I still had our kids half the time. Never mind that I was already paying more than what the court initially required. She saw me as a bank account, not a father. The kids were emotionally overwhelmed. The instability, the constant pressure, the feeling that they weren't welcome in their own mother's home. It broke my heart. They'd come back to me in tears. They didn't want to go back, and I had to explain to them why they still had to. Eventually, I fought to get them into therapy. Lisa refused at first, said it was unnecessary and an expensive guilt trip. Even when I offered to pay for every session myself, she still wouldn't agree. She accused me of trying to ruin the kids by making them think something was wrong with their lives. But I wouldn't back down. I took it to court, and thank God, the judge sided with me. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. As the years went on, things only got harder for my kids at their mother's house. The pressure wasn't just emotional anymore, it became material, too. Lisa and her husband started expecting my children to bring things from my house over to theirs. Video games, consoles, headphones, even board games or books. At first, it was subtle. Why don't you take that over to your mom's so the other kids can play too? But over time, it turned into a demand. They were being made to feel responsible for entertaining their younger half-siblings and Lisa's step-kids. They didn't want to bring their things over, not just because they didn't feel like sharing, but because their stuff would often come back broken or not at all. Once, my son lent a game to one of the younger kids over there, and it came back scratched and unplayable. Another time, my daughter's Switch controllers mysteriously disappeared. When she asked Lisa's husband about it, he told her she was being selfish and should learn to be generous. The resentment built up. My kids hated going over there. Every week, when they had to transition, they would shut down. My youngest, who was still a teenager at the time, would get physically sick with anxiety. I could see the toll it was taking on them. I tried going back to court to get majority, even full custody. But the first attempt failed. The kids were still considered too young for their preferences to carry legal weight. The judge acknowledged there were concerns, but unless there was direct proof of neglect or abuse, their preferences alone wouldn't sway custody. It was devastating. I walked out of that courtroom feeling like I'd failed them, but I didn't give up. I continued documenting everything, kept records, supported the kids through therapy, and worked closely with their counselors. I stayed involved in every part of their lives: school, social activities, medical care. And finally, 3 years ago, after another petition and court hearing, this time with the kids old enough to voice their wishes directly, I was awarded full custody. When I heard the judge say the words, I don't think I've ever felt such a flood of relief and heartbreak all at once. Relief that my kids were finally safe, finally out of that emotionally toxic environment. By that time, Lisa had had 2 more children with her husband. And while you might hope that shared blood would spark some connection, the truth is, my kids never bonded with their half-siblings. There was no real relationship there. They didn't blame the kids, but they didn't feel any sense of attachment to them either. They didn't want weekend visits or family days. They wanted peace, stability. Even after custody shifted, my kids made it clear they didn't want regular contact with Lisa's household. And I honored that. I didn't push. I never said a bad word about Lisa to them, never tried to influence them, just let them speak their truth. When the custody change happened, so did the financial responsibilities. Instead of me paying child support to Lisa, the arrangement was reversed. It wasn't much, but it was symbolic in a way. The tide had turned. Lisa eventually petitioned the court to reduce her payments last year due to financial difficulties. And the court granted her a reduction. I didn't fight it. I wasn't in this for the money. I just wanted what was best for my kids. In the last couple of months alone, Lisa has contacted me 42 times. 42 emails. Each one pleading, bargaining, or guilt-tripping, asking for financial support, hand-me-downs, old belongings from our kids' younger years. She wanted their childhood items sent over to her house, not for sentimental reasons, but for her other kids. She mentioned things like gaming consoles, books, shoes, outgrown clothes, anything she thought might ease her burden a little. I replied once. Just once. I was firm, but not cruel. I made it clear that I would not be sending anything, and that I wasn't going to supplement her household finances. I said it directly. My responsibility is to our children, and our children alone. Since then, I haven't responded. Every message that's come through has been read, archived, and documented by my lawyer. Not out of spite, but for protection. But she didn't leave it there. Of course she didn't. A couple of weeks ago, she confronted me outside the kids' school pickup, no warning, just appeared and started pouring her heart out. She went on about how hard things are, how she can barely afford groceries, her husband's income isn't cutting it, and how she's overwhelmed by trying to raise 4 kids, 2 of whom aren't even biologically mine. But I didn't give in. I told her the truth. I reminded her that none of this is new to me, that I've also been the parent figuring it all out alone, that I've sacrificed, worked overtime, gone without, done all the things parents have to do to raise good kids in difficult times. I reminded her that I did all that while watching her lie to me, cheat, drag me through court, and then weaponize our kids to get money. I said plainly that her household and her decisions are no longer my concern. And I meant it. She didn't take it well. Later that night, she sent me a long email, maybe 5 or 6 paragraphs of emotional overflow. She talked about how lonely she felt, how unsupported she'd been since the divorce, how I'd abandoned her when she needed me most. I didn't even finish reading it. I closed the message and left it unanswered. But she didn't stop there. She even sent one of our old mutual friends, someone I haven't seen or spoken to in over a decade, who had taken her side during the divorce, to track me down and confront me. This person told me I was cruel, that I'd abandoned Lisa twice, that I needed to find compassion. I shut it down immediately. Still, I'll be honest. A part of me does question whether I could have handled it differently. Lisa is still the mother of my children. That will always be true, no matter what kind of wreckage lies between us. And while my kids want nothing to do with her right now, and I've supported them in that, it's possible that one day that might change. Reconciliation, even in small ways, could become important to them as they grow into adults. I wonder sometimes if the way I responded, especially when I told her to save the sob story for someone who cares, was too harsh. I wasn't lying. I really don't care about her struggles anymore. But maybe what I said wasn't for her. Maybe it was for me. Maybe it was me speaking out years of frustration and buried betrayal. Maybe it was my way of finally saying out loud what I've been carrying silently for years. That I've done enough. And yet, I keep circling back to what kind of man, what kind of father I want my kids to see. I want to be their protector, their safe place. But I also want to model integrity and decency, even when it's hard, even when the other person hasn't earned it. I'm not ready to reach out to Lisa. Not yet. And I still think she needs to figure out how to clean up her own life without dragging me into it. But maybe the next time I speak with her, if there's a next time, I won't lead with anger. Maybe I'll try to meet the situation with firmer boundaries and more clarity. Not for her. For me. And for our kids. Maybe that's the real work left to do. Not fixing the past, but deciding how I carry it going forward.